Hello wine lovers, welcome back again to our channel Uncorked. My name is Roland Zimmermann and I'm here to talk to you today about how to age wine and the influence wine temperature has on storing and serving wines. Stick around, we'll be right back. To some of the points that we get asked about how to age wines in our retail space and online is what are some of the best wines to age, what temperature to store wine at and then also to serve it at, and where should you age your wine. So there's a couple things that I need to go over before I actually really address these. The best wines to age are reds. With 99% certainty, reds are the best wines to age because of the tannin color complex or the anthocyanin complex that these wines naturally have in their production. I've gone over this before in other videos. You can look it up and see how red wines are made. Point being that this component, these color and tannin components, actually provide a level of oxidation protection. And you need oxidation protection for aging because otherwise your wine is going to look like shriveled raisins. Sorry, bad image, but you get the idea. It's not going to be very pretty. So, some of the varieties that are best suited for aging tend to be wines like Cabernet Sauvignon are popular, Cabernet Francs, Merlots are popular. These are typical varieties that are used in the Bordeaux blends that most people have probably heard of before. Just on a side note, specifically with Bordeaux, there are a lot of wines that come out of Bordeaux that are made specifically for aging. Part of the reason for aging is to soften the tannins in the wine that are inherently present. Red wines tend to be the best ones for this because they naturally have tannins present during the production process. Getting back to how else to age wines. So part of the historical reason for aging wines was because of travel. You have to keep in mind that in the 1700s, when the English were buying wine from the French in the Bordeaux area, they would often have to travel very, very long ship voyages before they would actually be consumed by the consumer. And basically, because of these long ship voyages, the wines just had to be made differently so that they could age during transportation. And that's part of the development of red wines as being the preferred wines to use for aging. I brought with me today a trusty little example. Well, little might be a bit of a misnomer. Here you go. This is our 2010 Cabernet Franc Double Magnum. Now, it's actually really simple on how to store wines. I'll show you. You have to keep them on your side. And now some of you might be concerned that, oh, it's going to leak out, but not to worry. I've covered this in an earlier video talking about corks and how they're an excellent natural sealant. So, what you do once you've got the bottle on its side, obviously in a dark, cool place would be a good place to store it, and especially out of direct sunlight, that's very, very important, is to just leave it. Obviously, the longer you leave it, the better the wine will get, and this is very true. Now, I have to explain that because there's a little bit of a caveat with that. Some of the best wines to age are red wines. In fact, probably 95% of all the wines in the world that are aged tend to be red. And this has to do with the tannin and color complex that is present due to the production methods of red wines. This helps prevent oxidation, which helps to age the wine. And oxidation, a little bit of oxygen in the wine, is what is absolutely killer to the flavor. So obviously the more protection you have, the better the aging potential of the wine. Couple other things that you want to keep in mind with wines, the best suited wines for aging, to make sure that the winemaker or the winery specifically has made the wine with this in mind. You can often find that out by just speaking to the retail store staff at most wineries, or actually contacting the winery and asking to speak to their winemaker or oenologist to see, okay, what wines do you have that should be aged? A lot of these varieties are very well publicized. Varieties like Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot are all traditional red wines that have tremendous aging potential. I would be remiss if I didn't speak to white wines and aging. Some of the white wines that are best known for aging are Riesling. In fact, there are some very, very old Rieslings which are extremely delicious and very, very enjoyable if you can find them. This is a variety that has been aged for long periods of time in Germany, and they've had good success with it. It does develop a certain flavor, some people refer to as a petrol note, but that's for another video at another time. So I've covered some of the best wines to age. Where to store it, again, a cool, dark place, out of direct sunlight is best. And how to store the temperature of the wine is also an extremely important factor. What most people don't realize is that if you store your wine next to your stove in your kitchen, it's going to oxidize very quickly. Try it at home if you don't believe me. Put a bottle of wine that you haven't opened next to the stove for 1 week while you're cooking at home, and obviously have 2 of these bottles, and you put one in the fridge. Open both bottles on the same time and try them, and you will be surprised at the difference the flavor has between the 2 bottles. And it's purely temperature. It's the only thing. Temperature is such an important component of aging wines because the higher the temperature, the faster the oxidation occurs of the wine. And the faster something oxidizes, the faster it ages, which means it's not going to last very long. The best temperature to store white wines tends to be anywhere from 4 degrees Celsius up to about 12 degrees Celsius. For red wines, it's actually a little bit higher. It tends to be from about 14 through to 18. It really does depend on the wine and how it's made as to which temperature range you should be sitting or storing the wine at. Speaking to the winery that you purchased it from or the agent that you purchased it from, they will likely be able to advise you more specifically on the absolute best temperature. Again, there are wonderful wine fridges available on the marketplace that can control the temperature for long periods of time. These are usually an excellent investment for a beginning collector to start storing some wines, especially if you don't actually have something like a root cellar or a basement that has a consistent temperature the year round. This brings us to the final question, is what temperature to serve wines at? Interestingly enough, white wines are actually served a little bit cooler than red wines. And part of the reason is because, as I mentioned earlier about the oxidation component, as white wines warm up, they oxidize faster, which means you lose that wonderful bouquet, that aroma, that what you really like about the wine basically flies out of your glass. And if you keep it a little bit cooler, it stays in the glass a little bit longer, and therefore you get to enjoy the wine longer. With reds, it's a little bit different because, as I mentioned much earlier, there is this chemical component present in red wines, the anthocyanins, which help protect against oxidation. And this also helps mitigate some of the temperature swings that may occur. Obviously, red wines don't want to be baked in the sun when you're serving them, but they can be served basically at hand temperature, at room temperature, without adversely affecting the flavor. In fact, if you brought one of your stored or aged wines up from your cellar, it might actually be too cold to serve immediately. You might need to let it rest on the counter for about half an hour, 45 minutes, because you need it to come up just literally like 1 or 2 degrees Celsius, and that'll make a world of difference in terms of your enjoyment and the flavor that you will perceive in the wine. That's it for me today. Thank you very much for watching. Give us some likes, please, and subscribe down below. And any comments or feedbacks, greatly appreciated. Thank you. We'll see you again soon.